if you had a source that had a first name, what would it be?
I very sorry, Malcolm. I can't comment on any of my sources.
We will try next time. Hey guys, welcome to Muscle Memory. My name is Malcolm. We have entered the House of Wrestling because I'm here with Nick Hausman. How are you, man?
I'm great, Malcolm. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, man. I mean, thank you for inviting me into your place.
Yeah, this is the actual house. The actual House of Wrestling.
The actual House of Wrestling. What's the last big breaking news you've broken so far in this wrestling space?
Oh man, the last big breaking news I broke in this wrestling space. Well, the MJF news, I think, right? That WWE thinks that his contract goes through 2027 with AEW, and that they're not talking to him. So from what I was told from WWE, like this whole am I going to WWE? Am I going to AEW? This is a storyline that just existed in his head, as it was told to me. It's a false narrative, and it doesn't seem like WWE would like to be a part of this AEW storyline anymore.
Oh man, I mean, it's kind of a stinker, man. What are you
talking about? That's amazing. That's real insight, right?
It is real insight.
Do you want to live in this fantasy world?
Yes, a little bit, yeah. It's wrestling. I like kayfabe, brother. I mean, that's just me. That's how I roll. But dude, I mean, you started this giant website. I mean, I feel like everyone already knows you from like Wrestling Inc., etc. You've done so much in the space. Yeah. What led you to starting House of Wrestling?
It was just time, right? Like you said, like I had done Wrestling Inc. for 5 years. I was I was executive editor at WrestleZone for 3 years and had spent a lot of time on the independent wrestling scene as manager, commentator, whatever. And I had the ability, the lane to try to do it on my own and just create my own piece of property in this space. I had a lot of friends pushing me to do it. Yeah. So I did it. That's why. It's not that complicated. Yeah.
Simple enough.
Yeah.
Where did it all start for you? What was like your beginning of like getting into this wrestling space as far as like entering the media side, the news side, the interview side, the journalism side? Where did it start for you?
Well, I got tired of getting beat up as a manager. I was falling down a lot. I got diagnosed with spinal stenosis in this past year, and I had an epidural, and that's all from falling down, taking bad bumps. So it wasn't just in my head that I was feeling beat up. I was actually really beat up, So I just decided I wanted to stay in wrestling and tell jokes, which is something I love to do. And I just I read WrestleZone every day at the time. Yeah. I just called them every day. I emailed them like every day to the point it got like obnoxious. And I was like, I really just want to do like post-show stuff. And then I got in, I did that. And I was like, I'm not making any money doing this. Like, well, if you want to make money, can you write? I was like, yeah, I can write, I guess. They're like, well, if you write, we'll pay you. And so I started writing and podcasting and building all the skills, you're doing, everybody else does when you start getting into the space. But that's how I did it. And that was all Nick Paglino at WrestleZone let me do that.
Amazing, man. You mentioned you were a manager at one point. Like, who have you managed in your wrestling career so far, for people that don't know?
People you do or you don't know?
Yeah, let's go with both.
People you don't know. Probably don't know Maddie Starr, Ryan Slade, Ashton Vatan. I don't... Bobby, or what was he? El Chivas Blanca? Yeah. Blanco. Who else did I manage that you wouldn't know? I liked it better when can I tell you some people you do know?
Yes.
Okay, so the last person I managed was Mustafa Ali.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and Chicago guy. Yeah, I managed Rhino for a while. That was fun. Yeah, but my crew was mostly it was these guys like I told you didn't. So Maddie, Ryan, Zach, and Ashton. We were a unit here in Chicago for 3-4 years, and I worked a couple other places as well. But that was kind of what it all built to, was working with them. I worked in Billy Corgan's Resistance Pro Wrestling for.
Oh, nice!
I was Billy's first managerial hire. He had me with the Almighty Sheik. Yeah. There's a reason I know so many people in Billy's orbit. Just a lot of small Chicago world that seems to be just bleeding out, but. Yeah, a lot of people, places, things I did as a manager, yes.
You mentioned Billy Corgan. I feel like your name's been talked about a lot when it comes to the NWA moving into the CW app and everything that's unfolded with their company so far. Sure. What have you made of like the comments you've heard so far about what you've reported about in House of Wrestling? Because EC3 has had a lot to say. Other people have had a lot to say. How do you respond to that?
Well, I haven't really seen any of it been disputed necessarily. I was heartened. I saw Billy do an interview with Mike Johnson, where he said, we're financially fine and nobody's losing their jobs. And that's music to my ears, right? Yeah. I had heard that, and again, in the moment, I believe that to be true, but I do think Billy is going to be making cuts here going into next year. But music to my ears, to hear him have to be pushed to say out loud, people are getting to keep their jobs. We're going to keep doing things at a high level because that's what real journalism is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Journalism is supposed to be able to speak truth to power to make sure that the industry stays, in good standing. People don't run amok. You don't want to just sit here and placate people for interviews and ask silly questions that make sure you stay in the room because then you're just feeding into the problem. Yeah. Then you're just doing what they want you to do. What we're here to do is to keep people accountable, and we're here to push them to make good decisions. And that's what good journalism does, because I know for a fact that Billy has been keeping up very closely with the reporting that I've been doing. And again, the only thing he disputed was that financially they were fine and people are keeping their jobs. Great. I'm happy to hear him dispute that and say that people are keeping their jobs. But as the rest of it, I mean, look, they're on the CW app now, right?
They are.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there was no press release. Billy put it out in an 8-word tweet. I don't know. I'm just telling people what I'm hearing, and there's a reason I'm putting it out there. And it again is to make sure that people of influence and power know they can't operate in the darkness and in the shadows. That if they're doing things that people find misleading or that they just don't think are right, the role of the press is to shine a light on that, hold people accountable, and I'm not surprised to see some very loyal NWA people are standing up and putting up a strong front. I would do the same thing right now.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
How do you think wrestling media also grows? I feel like there's a lot of people are asking questions, stay in the room and whatnot. Right. There's a lot of people that are trying to get their way into a room, so you're playing a little safe. What's the goal like wrestling media in your mind?
I want it to be more, I want it to be more like sports, more sports where I want people to be less scared. Yeah. If you don't want to answer a question, I understand that, right? Yeah. Take the question though, right? Don't dodge people. Again, if you're doing something that you don't want talked about because you're not proud of it, that's the stuff we need to make sure is being talked about. Yeah. Right? That's the stuff we need to be holding people accountable for. And I'm not trying to be mean or aggressive or whatever. I'm just talking about the stuff that I know that, again, I spent time as an entertainer, as a performer on the side of it. I've been on the side of the media. I see what people are saying. I'm asking the questions I think that people in the industry want asked and they want to hear talked about. And, I think that's it. I think you just, go in there, try to ask the questions that you want to hear answered, that your friends or your industry insiders want to hear answered, and the fans want to hear answered, and try to find wherever that sweet spot is for you, I guess.
How do younger wrestling media, journalists, maybe myself and others are trying to grow into that space where they can be in that room and be able to ask those kind of questions? How do they get to that position?
Well, it's just all hustle, right? I worked for a long time, just in the space, grinding, doing interviews and podcasts and stuff. Honestly, it wasn't until AEW came along that a lot of these opportunities even existed. Yeah. WWE was not doing the press conferences, the media availability of stuff. We're talking a 4 or 5 year period now where this has really kind of gotten to where we're being. And so I was in a very fortunate position to kind of be a part of the first wave of people that was a part of this era of what's going on. Yeah. So I kind of had worked to a point. But for everybody else now, it's just about showing up. It's about being in the room, finding an outlet that can get you there, finding an outlet that can help you get that credential. And if you don't have that outlet, finding those connections to get to know people in the company. I think nowadays it can't be said enough that having a brand or a platform is huge, right? Because we're all numbers now. It's not just they like this guy. It's 56,000 people like this person versus somebody who maybe has 150, or whatever, or 150 people, whatever. It's a lot of things, but definitely, building a strong brand and letting them know that if we do stuff with you, people are actually going to see it and hear it.
For sure.
Yeah.
When you're looking if I'm a wrestling fan, I'm looking through different articles are being said about different rumors, speculation, etc.
Sure.
In your opinion, what are the most credible wrestling sites?
Oh, the most credible wrestling sites. It's a great question. Well, I love Sean and Fightful. I think Fightful does a great job, right? I think Dave, Meltzer, the Observer, does a good job. I do have to caution, I think, with a lot of the wrestling sites, because of the nature of how the sites operate, just the rapid churn. Wrestling fans, it's not like the New York Times. You're sitting waiting for that one big piece where everything's all tied together. A lot of it's just kind of piecemeal, right? You're getting things one at a time. And so I do feel like sometimes you have to kind of look at it through the guise of like, it's a lot of single source type stuff. Got to question a lot of it. But I do feel like you get a good vibe of what's going on through Dave. Mike Johnson, PW Insider, I think, obviously does a good job. Wade Keller, I like at the Torch. I'm just listing off all the people I know, honestly, that I came in, except for Sean. Sean's kind of the new one in the room. Yeah.
That's fair. I'm just going to ask it. I don't know how you're going to answer this, but who are your least favorite wrestling journalists?
Oh, God, I don't want to answer that question. I don't think it does anyone a service to answer that.
Sean Ross Sapp was the answer.
Sean, I'm sorry. It's Sean, my most beloved and hated of pro wrestling fellowships, yes.
What kind of wrestling is what when you watch wrestling, you turn on the television, what really gets you going as far as this is actually a really good match, etc.? Because you're in a space where you kind of know a lot what's going on behind the scenes. So have you ever just watched a wrestling match recently? It's man, that was just good.
Oh, yeah, all the time. I get lost in wrestling matches all the time and really enjoy myself. What was one I really liked recently? I really liked the Gunther stuff with Chad Gable. I thought those matches were always straight bangers. Yep. The Swerve Hangman Page stuff was so bizarre. I couldn't look away. I don't want to say I liked it. It was just oh, what am I watching right now? I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
That's fair.
Yeah, I consume so much wrestling. I will say, just in general, big fan of Gunther at the moment. I think him and Miz were a couple hours away. We're going to steal the show Survivor Series.
Who are your top 5 guys right now, if you could list them?
I think it's tough to say that Cody's not doing incredible work right now. I mean, you kind of just look at the babies and they put them all together, right? Cody, Sammy, Seth, KO. LA Knight's doing obviously incredible work at the moment. I mean, what a guy, just kind of making you watch him. Then on the women's side right now, I think Charlotte Flair's got a fire underneath her right now. She's every year she just comes in more intense. I don't know how it gets more, but it's just more and more intensity in her eyes. And in NXT right now, I think Roxanne Perez is great. I think Tiffany Stratton's grabbing people right now. I'm a big NXT fan. I think Joe Gacy's, gonna hopefully come into his own here pretty soon. He was great on the independents, and he did everything in his possible with what they gave him here the last year. And I'm excited to see him off into somewhere else. I mean, there's a lot to like right now. And on the AEW side, obviously, Max is a once in a generation kind of talent, and like I said, Swerve, I think everybody's turning their head right now. It's Swerve Strickland. That guy's on fire at the moment. Tony Storm on the women's side over there.
Yes.
Talk about again.
Yes, gimmick is great.
Doing great work. I think her and Mariah May are just hopefully given some time to really tell a great story. I think I know where they're going with it. It's not too hard, but really, really good stuff over there. So, just a couple off the top of my head.
What's your thoughts on Omos? Because you should have put him at top 5, maybe top 1.
Hey,
just putting out there.
Omos is my boy.
As he should be. Yes.
I got invited to a private dinner for press and WWE higher ups earlier this year. Seahawk was at this,
nice.
And
shout out Seahawk.
Hi, Cameron. And I got put at the Omos table, and I got to eat this really fancy dinner with Omos.
Yeah.
And he was so cool and so chill, and he talked to us about the whole journey he's been on, and I asked him how what he had is different than Andre, and he really got into all the details, and he was so charming, and he had everybody's attention at the table, and every time I see him now at press events, he's always very nice, and he asked me why we're not talking more or something. I don't really know, but really nice guy. Top of my list for sure.
As he should be. Omos is the future undisputed WWE Divas champion of all time. I feel like there's one name that's synonymous with Nick Hausman. I feel like everyone, I think you know where I'm going with this. We're in Chicago. It's CM Punk. So I got to ask about it. I mean, there was this one little media scrum where I don't even think you even asked a question. I think you kind of just were present, and then he kind of just started speaking, and then they kind of just kept flowing. What was your thoughts on that, sitting there and just having this guy just speak to you in such a manner?
Well, I whatever. Like a war correspondent, you got to be ready for anything, right? I never, the thing that I thought was so interesting in that moment is because like I don't really have any issues with Punk. Punk was always super cool to me. Used to come to my improv shows with me and Cabana when we were doing them. I've been to his condo. He was very hospitable to me. This was years ago. So when he came back, I was really excited because I had these nice memories of him. I did not know that there was this, that he thought that Cabana and I were still friends. Obviously, everyone knows now we aren't. So it was fascinating for me to watch because it didn't come out of nowhere. I had been asking about the Cabana story for like at least 2 months because it had been out there, if not longer, and was the one kind of really beating the drum because I was hearing so much stuff about it, and I had kind of seen Cabana operate in a similar way in the Chicago comedy scene. Yeah. And so, it was cool because like he was wrong. And when I told him he was wrong, he's like, Nick, you blew my spot, and everybody laughed. And now all of a sudden the heat was off me and it was on everybody else. And I'm the only one in the room that really nobody was like upset with in that moment. They're like, oh man, we kind of feel bad for this guy. And I'm sitting here like, I kind of feel great for this guy because I got all the best seat in the room here right now. And so, anyway, I don't know if I answered your question. There you go.
That's totally fine. I mean, I'm just asking, like, just sitting there, you're just like, man, this is some odd history that's developing right in front of you.
I knew it was going to be something people talked about for a long, long time. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know it was going to result in a fight. I was real surprised by that, by the way, because when Punk left the room, I could tell he was, like, upset, but I got the vibe he was kind of like distraught. Mm-hmm. Like it didn't come across to me like a guy who wanted to raise his fist. It came across to me like a guy who just wanted to like sit down and just like yell at some people until they figured it out. At least that'd be some kind of communication because it definitely felt to me like a guy who didn't feel like he was being heard, right? So he acted out that way. It was crazy, man, and whatever, let in everything else.
What do you make of his AEW exit, and do you think he returns to the WWE?
I think it was overdue. Yeah. I think that they should have parted ways after All Out. In retrospect, I think it was probably pretty obvious at that point. I don't think it needed to escalate any further. I think that if you were going to make it work, you needed to have a lot more guardrails in place. And I don't know that Tony put the guardrails in place to make sure that was going to be something that worked. You can't just say, I have you under contract, show up, do your job, and not have any kind of mediation or like, if you don't do this, there's penalties. It just kind of felt like everybody was kind of doing their own thing. So I think in hindsight, being what it is, it probably would have been better if Punk and AEW had parted ways after All Out. I think Tony would have looked better. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think Tony would have looked better. I think that the talk of Punk going to WWE would have been less because people would have gone, why would you hire the guy after that? But then you brought him back and you kind of exposed why he was that way in the scrum with the continued kind of
little shots here and there,
where
little bad hangman, counterfeit bucks.
Yeah, but
tell me when I'm telling lies.
But then you got the stuff that the Bucks are doing, behind the scenes, and the stuff that Jack Perry's doing, and it's just there weren't again guardrails in place.
Ryan Nemeth also Ryan,
there's all kinds of stuff, right? It was just untenable. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Life
happens.
It was just it was untenable. Yeah. And I think in hindsight, being what it is, I think they should have parted ways at that time. But now that we're where we're at, and as we sit here, hours before Survivor Series, I still have people asking me nonstop if Punk's coming back. Yeah. I'm not under the impression Punk's coming back. Stranger things have happened. Maybe a call happened in the middle of last night where Nick Khan says, "Hey, let's make some moolah here. I can get Ryan Barkin print these shirts any minute." Actually, they don't have Barkin; they use some other operation. That's a Pro Wrestling Tees reference. So maybe I'm going to say 90% will not be there.
Yeah,
but I think he comes back down the road. I've had people say as early as the Rumble. I've had one person who I would think would be knowledgeable say they think that they'd make him sit out for somewhere around 3 years.
I can't imagine that.
The logic I'm being handed about Punk is it's not necessarily the... Oh my God, stop. Okay. Sorry. It's the logic I'm being handed about Punk is it's not necessarily about like the lawsuit that they had where he went out, which was not good. I sat through that. Where he made the WWE and Discovery air all these things that they don't want out there.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have gone to court with WWE in the past. The difference here is in this moment, there is a belief that I think some in the company think that Punk brings in some kind of unpredictable chaos wherever he goes. And at the moment, they are running such a tight ship. They are running an incredibly tight ship, a ship that is running so smoothly, has no drama, makes tons of money, and, even if you like Punk, even if you're like, hey, I think we can make some money, if you got a hot hand, if you got a hot hand, do you do something? And I think that's where we're at right now. Things could always change. But the indication I've been given is that it's just they just got such a hot hand going right now. I just don't know that it makes a lot of sense.
I know you probably can't say names, but we always hear on Fightful Select, House of Wrestling, sources. How does one get sources in wrestling media?
I always tell people the best way to learn how to get sources in pro wrestling is to get involved in your local independents. Go get involved in the indies. Go talk to wrestlers. Go talk to pro wrestling promoters. Just go talk to people in the business. One conversation will lead to another conversation will lead to another conversation. If you sit around talking to other wrestling fans about how do I find sources and you're not in the business, you're never going to find sources. You have to go in and get a part. You have to be engaged with the business, at least on some level. My route, the one I went through was, I actually did the indies and I had a lot of wrestlers. I not a lot, but I had a handful of influential wrestlers I worked with in improv, and I taught them how to do comedy and stuff. Yeah. But you got to know people. You got to get out there. You got to talk to people, and that's the only way you're ever going to make connections, get sources.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So who are your sources?
I can't ever comment on my sources. Sorry.
No, you can't? No,
sorry,
okay.
Malcolm.
All right. I'll ask a better question. If you could comment on your sources, what are their names?
I'm sorry, Malcolm. I can't comment.
It's worth.
I'm just
trying to ask a question.
I apologize.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Survivor Series coming up. What's your favorite Survivor Series match of all time?
Oh man, my favorite Survivor Series match of all time. I always liked what was I watching back the other day? I was watching the Ziggler-Rollins match back the other day. That was a really enjoyable watch that popped up on my feed. Mysterio Brock Lesnar, the debut of Dominic Mysterio. Yeah. As I'm sitting here thinking about matches that popped out to me, that was a really fun match. That was the first time we ever saw Dom and Ray hit the double 619.
That was a cool moment.
That was a really cool moment. I was there for that. That was in Chicago, I believe. Or where was that? I think it was in Chicago.
Might have been.
I
feel like people always associate those like Brock Lesnar matches as like it was the Brock and Ray, Brock and Bryan, and Brock and Styles. How would you rank those three? Personally, I'm going Bryan, I'm going Styles, respectfully, and putting Ray last. So I feel like that one moment was the moment of the match, and then that was kind of it.
Yeah, Bryan's the man. Here's the thing about Bryan Danielson is I think somebody needs to tell him that wrestling's a work. I don't know that he knows that. I think he's forgotten that, When I think about Bryan Danielson, I think about that opening scene in Bret Hart's, what was it, Not Dark Side of the Ring, it was Wrestling with Shadows.
Yeah.
Like the very first opening scene, he's like, you ever wonder why it looks like I kicked somebody as hard as I could in the face and then they don't walk away with a black eye? That's the magic of wrestling, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyone told Bryan that?
I would say the same thing for Gunther. I mean, those chops are looking vicious.
I just look at what Bryan Danielson put MJF through, and that guy with that hematoma, and just like, he's like, I died 3 times in this match. And it's like, maybe it's all worth it, man. Maybe it is. I don't know. But that's just, It's not my vibe. It's not the way I like my wrestling.
Yeah, personally, if I like stub my toe, I'm out for 6 weeks. How Bryan Danielson wrestles other people, it's ridiculous.
Dude, he's a wild man.
He is.
He's crazy.
That's why he's the best in the world.
Some say that, yes.
Some say that. What are your 5 favorite CM Punk matches of all time?
Oh, I don't know. That's tough.
That's tough.
The Cena John Cena match, obviously the Summer Punk one,
Yes.
right, was very, very good with Money in the Bank and everything. What other CM Punk match? I actually like Punk Undertaker. I thought
WrestleMania?
Yeah, I thought the Mania.
Yes.
I thought the build to it was actually pretty good too.
Yes,
I know that
yes,
wasn't
yes.
one of his faves, but I actually really kind of liked that one. I liked all the Straight Edge Society stuff. I thought him and Gallows and Serena were great act there. Didn't necessarily love them working with Big Show.
That's fair.
What are my favorite CM Punk matches?
Punk MJF.
Oh, dude. Well, I was gonna say actually, you took the words out of my mouth. Punk MJF dog collar match.
Yes.
Another one I was there for live.
Beautiful match.
And one of the best matches I've ever seen live was Punk MJF, the dog collar match. That was just an absolute straight banger. I don't know, it's a couple off the top of my head. I don't know if I could put 5 together out of nowhere.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, you could just throw in Punk and Samoa Joe. Both of them.
Punk and Joe at Wembley was really good. That's the thing, is like I don't want to just sit here and say the 5 most recent CM Punk matches
totally
I've watched. You know, I have to go back and sit and think and look back. I mean, because he had some great stuff with Bryan Danielson as well.
For sure.
With AJ in the mix there.
Sure.
That was like one of the hottest things in wrestling for a while. So I'd have to think, but those are a couple off the top of my head.
As we start to wrap this up, you have House of Wrestling. What about House of Wrestling brings you joy writing on your own site?
I love the freedom, right? I have 2 great writers, Innes McVeigh and Nick Miller. Props to Innes and Nick. It's been great watching them, kind of work with me, or it's been great to watch all of us work together to kind of figure out what we want this site to be, the tone and tenor, the news we want run on the site. I love the freedom. If I just want to go make a deal, like I start a new show Monday, Rumor and Innuendo, ad-free shows, first daily pro wrestling news podcast with me and Robert Carpelis, former WWE writer, and just being able to just do that, write, do interviews, get involved with other projects that I have in the works right now. Just the freedom to be able to do that stuff with no red tape and have a great. I'm happy every day. I work with great people. All of it is it's just a dream, and I'm just so thankful I get to do it.
Nick Hausman, thank you so much, man. Also, last question: if you had a source that had a first name, what would it be?
I very sorry, Malcolm. I can't comment on any of my sources.
We will try next time, guys. My name is Malcolm. This is Nick Hausman. We're in the House of Wrestling, and we're out. See ya.
Can I get Willow on camera?
Yes, grab her.
It's my dog.
We're bringing the dog in. She's amazing. The star of the show. This is Willow, no Nightingale. Hey, buddy. What are your sources?
My sources are CM Bark. What's CM Bark? That's not a wrestler. Is that a dog wrestler? Willow talks to Larry. Truth. That's where I get all my sources. Larry and Willow. Very close. It's Punk's dog.
I knew it.
It's Punk's dog that's giving me all the dirt.
We broke it. We broke it here. Right here on Muscle Memory. My name's Malcolm. This is Willow. This is Nick Hausman. We're in the House of Wrestling, and we're out.